Good morning and welcome inside of Smooth Breakfast. Right now it is 7:31. It's time for us to delve into the world of newspaper analysis inside Freshly Pressed. Joining Valentine and myself
Folu.
in the studio this morning, we have got. Good morning, Devoe.
Good morning, Lagos. Promise versus performance.
All right, all right, all right. We'll take it. We'll take it. Find Devoe up on Twitter as Devoe Okorie. Very straightforward. And also in the studio with us, we have Gbolahan. Good morning. How are you?
Morning, Lagos, and morning, Folu. I'm very well.
Great to have you here. You can find Gbolahan up on Twitter as Mr. G Quest. Now, we're jumping into the analysis, but don't forget to contact us on our different platforms this morning.
Send us a message on Twitter at Smooth981FM. Use that hashtag FreshlyPressed981 so we can see your messages and read them. You can also send it through to our WhatsApp platform. The number for WhatsApp is 0809 444 0981, and also on YouTube, just type in the search box Smooth 981 FM Lagos.
Okay, our first story is in from the Vanguard newspaper. Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya mull over a maritime pact. That's what the headline tells us. And essentially what the details are saying that they're intending to perhaps acquire and jointly operate a training vessel for cadets, saying that really it's all about collaboration. This is a global effort. Also, the article mentions how Mr. Dakuku Peter Side, who is the Director General of NIMASA, has also said, we've got a partnership with the United Arab Emirates to train for free 10 cadets over 10 years. That would be a total of 100 cadets. Now, Devoe, is this enough in terms of security for our waterways? And do you think perhaps that we should also be having details of ongoing training here within Nigeria? So when these cadets go, perhaps they should be instructed to go with the aim of also learning so they can teach others. What are your thoughts?
It's not exactly tailored for security, but it will lend to that eventually. What is key here is the collaboration between the four nations, that's South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya, at different locations within Africa, on a continental agreement to acquire a training vessel. A vessel is quite expensive. It comes at huge cost, and this vessel will just be for training. So we're looking at very enhanced technical training, especially for operators in the maritime administration, which is why NIMASA is at the top of this.
Right.
Now, since we can't walk this alone, I believe Nigeria is taking the lead here, and each of these countries would be participants because the association, that's the AMA, is working in tandem with the UAE, that's the United Arab Emirates, to do this training, who said that they would carry out training for 100 cadets free of charge. So that's 10 cadets per year. That's 10 across 10 years. And we need to take this quite important because at the end of the day, the all-round effect, first of all, we're talking about human capital empowerment, whereby the government gets to train its own staff, not just for us, but for other countries that have, all these countries are all sea borderline, and they all have trade relations going on. There is a level of skill required, especially at the maritime administration level, which some of our own local staffers don't have. So this will enhance that so that they could work not just at the local level, but at the international level. Secondly, the logistic enhance, as you do know, there's a lot of logistics that goes on, not just at the trade level, but you do need a regulatory body that has a very sound understanding of what's going on with the ships and all the trade that's going on, and also military services to ensure that all works well perfectly.
So that it's seamless.
Yeah. It's seamless. Then, long and short, the foreign policy synergy that's taking place is a good thing. Sometimes our politics doesn't work, but at the end of the day, on the altar of economics, we seem to come together and ensure that it's beneficial to all parties involved.
Thank you very much for that, Devoe. Now, let's talk politics, shall we? That's a little bit of what's coming up next from the Premium Times. And again, you'll find this story across several other national dailies. National Assembly adopts a fourth version of the Electoral Amendment Act. Now, in summary, from what we understand, from what's been put out really by the News Agency of Nigeria, let's be honest, because it's almost identical across all papers, is that, there've been 3 previous iterations. Essentially, there were problems with conferencing in one or the other And we've been told now, the National Assembly has said, listen, we've dealt with the inconsistencies that the executive had brought up, and we believe that this is a proper amalgamation of the second and third iterations of the Electoral Amendment Act. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think, of course, this issue has been going on for months now, and it started out where the National Assembly actually did the electoral amendment, which is in the right place to have done that, and it's much needed anyway. The issues where they had was the problem where the card readers wasn't actually in the on the Electoral Act, and it had to be amended. And then, but of course, as we normally have it anyway, sometimes you would always have these issues where certain other concerns are also inserted. And what had actually happened was that what the National Assembly had done was that they actually they changed the date for the elections and tried to push the senatorial elections forward before the presidential ones. And it was actually rumored that they were trying to actually just separate themselves from the elections, the presidential elections or so. Well, a lot of people read meanings into this, and the president also read meanings into this as well, to that, the National Assembly shouldn't actually be deciding who and when the elections should be taking place. That it should actually be decided by INEC or so. So the president refused to sign it. But right now, at the moment, we're actually on the third one now, and from the third amendment now, the was not signed or assented to by the president. The reason for not assenting to that was simply being there were also other issues, such as not inserting the card reader into the Electoral Act as well too. But thankfully now we think that the National Assembly is in tandem with the presidency at the moment now. There was a little bit of a confusion as to why the card reader wasn't also inserted in the second one. But of course, the explanation given by the National Assembly was that the third amendment was actually meant to be an addendum to the second one. So they didn't actually feel the need to actually insert it into the third amendment. But now what they've now done is that they've combined the two together,
with
and
the fourth
hopefully
iteration,
with the fourth one. So hopefully there will be harmony now, and the president would actually sign it. Of course, we all know the importance of the card reader anyway. It's, really helped a lot at the previous elections.
Thank you very much for that, Gbolahan. We appreciate it. Up next, is this going to be helpful? Is a question people are asking from the Punch newspaper. Osun Poll: the federal government pays constables 50,000 naira each for election duty. Some others are getting more. So there's a special allowance being paid out for the Osun governorship election. A total of 18,426 police personnel have been deployed to Osun State. The elections are coming up this Saturday, the 22nd of September. Those within the rank of inspector, assistant superintendent of police, and deputy superintendent of police were paid upwards. That's 120,000 naira each, and each of the 8 commissioners of police also deployed for the same exercise paid 250,000 naira. Reasons for this being given that, well, basically fraudulent politicians tend to compromise the integrity of police when they don't have enough money, when they're going to be staying in areas where they won't be able to go and get sort of food at the same cost or prices, or hotels. They're going to be in very highbrow areas, so they won't pay them enough to feel content. However, governorship candidate for the PDP, Ademola Adeleke, is saying this is all suspicious. Your thoughts, Devoe?
Osun elections. Who shall we be voting come Saturday? Well, I think the policemen, those who are meant to guide and to ensure security, would be smiling. And I hope they're not smiling simply because they have been given a boost.
They're smiling to the bank first of all.
Yes. So the federal government has given them some credits ahead of time to ensure that they're well prepared and well framed to be able to deliver a safe and secure election this Saturday.
And sorry, part of the preparation, which I didn't mention for our listeners out there, is they've actually been trained again, especially for this.
Now the amounts 50,000 between the constable and the sergeant, which is when a constable earns about 45,000, so that's like double his pay for just 1 day's duty. between the inspector and the superintendents, they get about 120, while the police commissioner, I think about 8 of them on ground, get about 250. This is quite handsome.
Each.
Now, the commissioner of police did mention that they had received this. He had confirmed it. But the political angle is where Adeleke, which is the PDP aspirant, was raising that he was doubting the intent of giving this amount of money right at this time, just a few days before the election. What was the intention at the end of the day? However it may be, we also expect the civil society and the election observers to also play their role. We've heard so many actions and protocols that INEC has put in place to ensure safety, to also ensure observation and reporting, and also some level of online reporting and digital reporting for those who can capture photos and videos of defaults that are taking place. We want Osun to be, we want to see improvement as the elections move forward. We've had Ekiti and there were issues with vote buying. We're hoping that that can be hedged come Saturday. It's something we should take very serious because after this election, we're looking forward to the national election come
I have a question, Devoe. Do you see any synergy between the different bodies involved in this election? Because as you mentioned, INEC have been speaking up a lot over the past few months about steps that they're taking to try and temper the vote buying incidents. We're seeing the police now stepping up, and I don't recall us ever having seen the police act this in this. We have, the citizens have been very wise since the last elections. What are your thoughts about seeing these different pieces coming together? Are we perhaps moving it in a turn positive?
Well, it's yet to be proven because we're taking at the AKT.
This gentleman is actually a award-winning writer.
Yes.
And it's expected anyway. But, in his defense, what he's actually claimed is that he's actually stated the Public Service Rule 030421, which actually says that it's giving him the right to write opinion articles. And according to that section, it actually notes that nothing in this rule shall be deemed to prevent an officer from publishing in his own name by writing speech or broadcast matters relating to a subject of general interest which does not contain a critique of any officer. And it also actually goes back to the freedom of information, freedom of expression as well, which is our fundamental human right anyway, or constitutionally protected by. And so, it actually raises the issue of employer versus worker relationship, where are you actually allowed to make public opinions about your employers? It raises that issue, and I think that puts it to bed anyway. This puts it to bed.
Thank you very much for that, Gbolahan.
We have messages in on WhatsApp. We'll take this one from MI from Akoka. MI says, the optics of this looks good, but the devil is in the details. I'm here for capacity development, but more instructively is that they should localize the intelligence and embed a continuity plan. A cool technical training. Is talking about the police deployment to Osun State.
No, actually talking about Nimasa.
Nimasa in the first place. Yes, that's right. And this one regarding the Osun election from Shegun says, so Senator Adeleke can complain about police payments, but did not appear for the debates. Interesting. Move on to this next story from New Telegraph newspaper. Wike, Buhari's security chief approached me, Wike says, yes, I'm Wike, governor of River State. He said they approached me to support PDP presidential aspirants. So the River State governor, yes, I'm Wike, yesterday disclosed this, that the head of the security agencies, whose name he didn't give to the press, saying that the individual pressured him to support a particular presidential aspirant of the People's Democratic Party to emerge as the party's flag bearer of in the 2019 elections. He made some statements, calling people with other names that have approached him lately to support candidates and even nominate a campaign coordinator. He's named Atiku, named Sule Lamido, named McCarthy and Taraki, and also Tambuwal, and not leaving out Ibrahim Shekarau. Devoe, what do you make of this story?
Well, it's more of the politicking that comes with campaigning. Wike here is just touting that an unexpected influence was trying to get him to support a presidential candidate within his own party, and obviously this was coming from the APC through through a very high member in the security forces. So he was trying to claim that this was how the APC had planted presidential candidates within their party. I think it's a story that took off some time ago when he was also claiming that the PDP had fake aspirants because many of them were planted, and that they did the same thing before in the likes of Amodu Sheriff, and at the end of the day he went to his real home after causing mayhem within the PDP. But I think it's still on the realm of politics that we should not lose sight of what is really happening when politicians are talking to themselves. As you can see, when the time is right, they jump the ship. We will wait to see. He has said that the PDP will not be misguided in their selection of the presidential candidate. That is yet to be proven, because there is the battle of heavyweights, the heavyweight championships to take place within the PDP to come out with one single aspirant against all the top heavy big men that they have jostling for that position.
But do you suspect there might be some element of truth in his report or allegation based on the recent, I wouldn't say misgivings, but we've been seeing some funny practices has been happening, cross-carpeting that you mentioned, and some other antics that the politicians have been revealing ahead of 2019 elections. Couldn't this be possible?
Of course, it's very possible. Politicians will stop at nothing to win, even if it means sponsoring people into another party to create some fuss. But you've got to play your politics right at the end of the day. If they're sending fake aspirants to him, maybe he should take a cue.
And do what?
Send back.
We'll watch this closely. Let's move on to this next story from the Daily Times newspaper. CBN acquires federal government's 12.4 billion naira shares in NSPMC. So the Central Bank of Nigeria, according to this report, in a meeting that was chaired by the Vice President of Nigeria, Yemi Osinbajo, who's the chairman of the National Council on Privatization, they said they acquired the CBN and the Bureau of Public Enterprises. They've reached an agreement for the sale of the federal government's 12.4 billion naira share in the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting Company. They said this will allow them, take over the most of the stake in the minting of currencies, and also establish them in the scheme of things to, spread their business tentacles to other parts of the continent. What are your thoughts on this, Gbolahan?
Well, it's a good move. Let me just say that at least this is actually part of the privatization exercise that government has been embarking on, according to the statement from the vice president. Anyway, of course, it says about 140 publicly owned companies have actually been privatized over the last 30 years, and so this is one of it. But my question is, how much of a privatization exercise is this anyway, considering the fact that the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting Company is actually a PLC already as it is, but it's partly owned by the government, which 30% is actually owned by the government. Before this. But now 20% is actually being sold off to CBN. But then when I look at it as well, so CBN is actually, it should be independent, but it's partly a government-owned, not government-owned, but it's partly a government entity as well too. So how much of a privatization exercise will I really call that anyway, if you're selling off to the CBN? Well, when we look at what the NSPMC does, they print money, and part of what they should actually be doing as well too should actually be printing security documents such as our passports, electoral documents as well too. And it's often been said as well too that there are issues with our passport production anyway. There's been so many incidences that has occurred in the past where we've not been able to get our passport on time because of the printing of the passport isn't actually ready. So let's hope that with this initiative now, they will be able to actually go into passport production and also printing other security documents, because that's what this article actually states, that currently they're not doing that now. All they're presently doing is only just printing money, but they're actually looking at going forward printing other security documents as well too. So it's a good move for the government, because this actually raises about 17 billion naira for the government coffers, and you know how much the government needs money.
Yes,
So
yes, and the vice president made another valid comment in addition to that amount that will be accruing to the government treasury. He said that noting that the private sector can really be at the cutting edge of technology and innovation, so they will best to hand this kind of assets
and
to.
invest more money into the business as well, and make it more profitable, because at the moment they're not really profitable. That's what it says.
Thank you very much, Gbolahan. We'll move on now to Guardian newspaper for this next story. Federal government to conclude ports concession review agreement by December. Devoe, this in the statements from this report, it says that the Nigerian Port Authority has disclosed that the review of ports concession agreements have reached advanced stage and would be signed by December. They're saying that it would engender a new regime that would herald improved port efficiency in the country's maritime sector. What are your thoughts on this?
Lots of blue ocean news today. Maybe we should all take a swim after. This story is key because I hate the fact that now towards the end of this administration they begin to work.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little too late. I'm not sure people remember some of these gallant moves when they're voting. Here, the NPA is looking at, led by Bala Usman, is looking at revising the concessionaire terms that had existed since 2006 during the Obasanjo regime, where they concessioned some of our port locations and operations to about within 24 terminals. So prior to this time, there were gaps, there were clear gaps where adequate legal and regulatory frameworks were not drawn up. So at the end of the day, a lot of the concessionaires were pitched against each other. There are a lot of defaults that did not have regulators that could actually hold them to ransom. They could say one thing and claim another. Many of them, some did invest in infrastructure while some were lacking. And there was no framework, so to speak, or guidelines or protocols to properly administer this. So she's saying that the revised one is coming out in December, which should take care of all the issues that they had been facing prior to this time. Now, that's great, and I think it will help in the administration, but I really was looking forward to the concessionaire in terms of the expansion, so that some of the ports that are moribund at this time are unactivated do come on stream. We're aware that One is fully on stream. It's been concessioned. We know Lagos has been concessioned to about 3 to 4 people with the various terminals that are there. But Warri, Port Harcourt, and Calabar are still behind the scene. We need them to come on stream, even though it's going to require extra funding because of the dredging and the infrastructural input before this administration leaves. If we can do that, maybe we can just consider this administration again.
Very briefly, in 30 seconds, how do you see this affecting, the checks on smuggled goods through the borders?
Yes, still, it spoke to the sanctions as well, especially to those who were facilitating smuggled goods like rice and what's the other one there? Rice and
you mentioned redefining the guaranteed minimum tonnage.
Guaranteed minimum tonnage, and many of the, like I said, protocols that they had been flouting simply because that there were no established protocols on ground that they could have worked with. Okay. So we're waiting to see how fast they can actually bring this.
Thank you very much, Devoe. For this next story, Punch newspaper, I'll come to you, Gbolahan, for this one. Court orders arrest of Senator Uzodinma over 200 million naira cheque. So according to this report, the presiding judge, Abdul Wahab Mohammed, issued the arrest warrant following a criminal complaint that was filed before the court by Chima Akuzie and his company, Chitech Ventures. They said that the senator issued the 200 million naira cheque in his name and the company's name, as that's SMIEC Engineering and Chemical Construction. Take us through this, because they said, according to this report, the lawyer did not appear in court after the first sitting.
Well, this says a lot about our institution, and we've heard this several times anyway, that our senators and people that are meant to be upholding the laws and actually writing the laws also are actually not obeying court orders and obeying the laws as well. It's a shame when we have this happening in a country such as ours. It's happened several times, and when you look at the offense that has been leveled against him, issued a 200 million naira dot check. I'm sure that shouldn't be too difficult to prove anyway. If you've issued a dot check, and we know what the CBN policy is on issuing dot checks. You know, there is very stringent laws on issuing dot check, but you know, the problem that we normally have is actually implementation of these laws. Now an arrest warrant has been issued against this senator. What exactly is the judge going to do going forward? Because we've had several of these cases, and what tends to happen is it normally just dies down, unfortunately.
Which party is he in again? Remind me.
I do not think we should make it.
Need I say more?
Political
Partisan.
statement.
On that note, we come to the end of Freshly Pressed for this morning. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Several messages have come in. We don't have too much time, but EJ from Arapo says, I'll be shocked if the special allowance paid to the law enforcement agents for the elections is not for some ulterior purpose. I'm sorry, I just don't trust these politicians. Big Tay Abiodun up on Twitter says the payment to the police is for at least 1 week of work, not 1 day. Most of those policemen have been on ground since last week, and this is easily verifiable, he says. And this one in on WhatsApp from Dami says, how can you have the contract print all the Naira notes and not be profitable? Questions. All right, thank you very much. Continue conversations online at Devoe Okorie. And go ahead and chat with that Mr. G Quest as well. That's Gbolahan. Thank you, gentlemen. Coming up next, we'll be talking sports at 8:15. So keep it locked right here. This is Smooth Breakfast with Valentine.
And Folu.
2 loans from Page Financial. Page Financial.
Today's stories.
Not very controversial.
No, just blah.